My parents said I was adopted, out of love. Then I found the paperwork they tried to burn. I made a throwaway account for this because I don't even know how to begin telling my friends or family what happened. It still feels surreal, and I'm honestly shaking as I type this. The thing is, if I don't get this off my chest, I feel like I might explode. So here goes nothing. It happened on my high school graduation day. If you'd asked me before that moment how I felt about walking across the stage, I would have said I was just anxious about tripping in front of everyone. Typical teenage worries, right? But that morning, my nerves were cranked up to an 11, and I couldn't figure out why. My best friend Tyler texted me nonstop, telling me to chill out, that it was just a ceremony and we'd be free from school forever. My mom, Jennifer, kept fussing over my gown, smoothing every wrinkle, insisting I look perfect for photos. She had that watery smile moms get when they're overwhelmed by the fact their kid has grown up. I tried my best to smile back, ignoring the weird knot in my stomach. When we arrived at the auditorium, I was bombarded by the usual graduation chaos. Excited classmates, proud parents, tearful teachers giving last-minute hugs. The principal stood at the entrance, shaking hands and beaming as if he personally raised each of us. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I noticed a figure standing off to the side, in the shadow of a vending machine. He was tall, with broad shoulders. He wore a dark blue cap pulled low over his eyes. Something about him tugged at the back of my mind, like a forgotten dream. But I shook it off. I figured it was just some other student's relative, looking for the restroom or something. So I ignored the feeling, took a few selfies with Tyler, and headed backstage where we lined up alphabetically. I remember the moment they called my name, Logan Matthews. A surge of pride and adrenaline hit me. I stepped onto the stage, the bright lights nearly blinding. For a second, I couldn't see past the first couple of rows in the audience. The principal handed me my diploma, and I remember hearing cheers from Mom, Tyler, a bunch of classmates. My heart hammered so loudly it almost drowned out everything else. Then I spotted someone in the back of the auditorium, a man standing alone, half hidden behind a column. I blinked, and the rest of the auditorium seemed to melt away. Because from where I stood, that man looked exactly like my father. The same father I was told had died 13 years ago. My brain literally short-circuited. I forgot I was on stage. It felt like someone slammed a fist into my chest, and for a second I couldn't breathe. The man's eyes met mine. Even at a distance, I recognized the subtle tilt of his head, the shape of his jaw, the way he stood with his shoulders slightly hunched. This was impossible. My dad, Michael Matthews, had been gone since I was 5. He'd died in a tragic car accident on a slick highway. I'd grown up with the story. Dad lost control, crashed, and never made it to the hospital. Mom told me so. She showed me the paperwork, the condolences from relatives. Yet here was this man who looked and stood and stared exactly like him. I stumbled on the edge of the stage. The principal's hand shot out to steady me, and I forced a shaky grin. The applause started to taper off, but people were still staring, wondering why I looked like I'd just seen a ghost. Somehow, I managed to walk off the stage, clutching my diploma in sweaty hands. I darted around the curtains, ignoring the line of students waiting for their turn, ignoring the bewildered expressions of teachers. My heart hammered so violently that I thought I might faint. All I could think was, how could it be him? But when I chanced to look back into the auditorium, scanning the crowd from behind the stage, the man was gone. It was as if he'd disappeared into thin air. After the ceremony, I was swarmed by classmates wanting photos, teachers giving tearful goodbyes, even a few underclassmen who wanted to sign yearbooks. My mom rushed up and hugged me so tight I could hardly breathe. Normally, I'd be rolling my eyes and laughing with Tyler, but I could only manage numb, automatic smiles. The whole time, I was craning my neck, searching every corner, scanning every face. The man, my father, never showed up again. I started to wonder if stress or adrenaline had made me see things, but I couldn't shake the certainty that the face I saw was real. Mom noticed how distracted I was. In the car on the way home, she kept glancing at me, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "You did great, sweetie," she said, trying to coax me into conversation. "I'm really proud." Valedictorian. Scholarships. Everything. I can't believe my baby's all grown up. Yeah, I managed. Normally, I'd be blushing at the compliments, maybe teasing her back. But I was stuck in my own head. I wanted to say, "Mom, I swear I just saw Dad," but I couldn't form the words. It felt insane. And deep down, I suspected she'd shut it down immediately, insisting that it was impossible. That night, I lay awake, replaying every moment of the ceremony in my mind. I remembered the shape of the man's shoulders, the color of his hair, that stunned look in his eyes that mirrored my own. The next few days were a blur. Tyler thought I was just going through post-graduation blues, so he kept texting me memes and jokes about how we were finally free from high school. My mom started pushing me about college decisions. She wanted me to finalize my dorm arrangements, go shopping for campus necessities, figure out my orientation schedule. She kept offering to help, telling me how exciting it all was, but I stayed distant. My thoughts returned again and again to that single moment of eye contact. Finally, one evening while Mom was out shopping, I decided to do something drastic. I went hunting for Dad's old box of keepsakes. I knew we had a cardboard box labeled Michael's Stuff stashed somewhere in the attic. I hadn't gone through it in years. Mom was always weird about me digging into the past, but I felt compelled. If this was some bizarre delusion, maybe rummaging through the old photos would help me make sense of it. It was a dusty, beat-up box, filled with random bits and pieces. Photos of my parents at their wedding, Dad's old baseball gloves, a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon, plus a few postcards from places he traveled to before I was born. I flipped through the pictures until I found one that made my chest tighten. Dad with his arm around me, both of us covered in sand at the beach, his face mid-laugh. Our hair color was a near match. I stared at it, searching for differences between that face and the man I saw in the auditorium. Other than some extra wrinkles and a bit of gray, it was the same damn face. I kept digging, looking for anything that would confirm or contradict the official story Mom always told me. But the letters mostly predated my birth, and all the photos suggested a regular, happy family. Then, at the bottom of the box, I found something that made my heart pound. A half-torn envelope with a date stamped about 6 months after Dad's supposed death. It was addressed to my mother. The return address was smudged, unreadable. Inside was a single scrap of paper that said, in a hurried scrawl, "I'm sorry. Protect Logan. Please trust me." There was no signature, but it sure as hell looked like my father's handwriting. I recognized the neat capital L in Logan, the way he wrote it on birthday cards when I was little. I'm not proud to admit it, but I was furious. Furious at my mom for apparently keeping this from me, for letting me believe for all these years that Dad died in a stupid car crash, never hinting that there might be more to the story. The note didn't confirm anything concrete, just that he might have still been alive long enough to send this message. But if that were the case, why vanish? Why let me grow up believing he was gone? I confronted Mom that same night. I could barely wait for her to put the groceries away. I stormed into the kitchen, envelope in hand, adrenaline coursing through me. "Mom," I said, my voice shaky, "what the hell is this?" I shoved the paper toward her. She froze, eyes flicking over it, then closed them like she'd been caught in the worst lie of her life. She moved to sit down at the table, motioning for me to join her, but I stayed standing. I was too pissed to settle. She took a long breath, tears already gathering at the corners of her eyes. "Logan," she said softly, "I can explain." "Oh, but that's good," I snapped, because I've got about a million questions. Starting with, did Dad really die 13 years ago? She pressed a hand to her forehead. "I don't know how to say this. It's complicated." I nearly laughed, a hollow sound that hurt my chest. "Try." She wouldn't look me in the eye, so I dragged a chair over, slumped into it, and waited. She finally whispered, "He was declared dead after an accident." That part is true, but I didn't see the body. The casket was closed. The coroner told me it was him based on ID they found at the scene. I believed them, or I tried to until I got that letter. It showed up in our mailbox months after the funeral. I recognized his handwriting, but I didn't know what it meant. It said to trust him, to protect you. I was terrified. I had no idea why he'd fake his own death, if that's even what happened. I just didn't want you getting hurt. I didn't want you clinging to false hope, so I never told you. I'm sorry. My rage simmered, tears stinging my eyes. "So you suspected for years that Dad might not be dead, and you never told me? Don't you think I had a right to know?" She started crying, big tears rolling down her cheeks. "Yes, maybe you did. But I thought if he was gone for good, it'd be cruel to raise doubts, to make you wonder if every stranger might be your father. I thought maybe the letter was a fluke, some sick prank. And if he was alive but in trouble, maybe we were safer not knowing. I didn't know what to do. I was alone. I'm so sorry." I felt sick, torn between sympathy for her desperation and anger at her lies. I slammed the envelope down on the table. "Well, I saw him at graduation," I spat. "I saw him with my own eyes, Mom." "Tell me that's impossible." Her face crumpled. She reached out to grab my hand, but I pulled away. "I didn't see anyone, but if you say you did, I believe you." Her voice was trembling. "I just don't understand what's going on. If he's alive, why hasn't he come forward?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in the house another minute. I stalked out, ignoring her cries of, "Logan, wait!" and drove aimlessly around town until I ended up in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner. I just sat there staring into the darkness, mind racing. Part of me wanted to call Tyler and unload everything, but it felt too big, too insane. Instead, I slumped in the driver's seat, trying to figure out how my whole life could be flipped upside down in a matter of days. Over the next week, Mom tried to talk to me about it multiple times. She apologized, sobbed, begged me to understand that she'd only been trying to protect me. I was too hurt to respond well. I mostly shut down, giving cold one-word answers. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop obsessing. Was Dad actually alive? If so, was he in danger? Was that why he never contacted me directly, or did he just not want us anymore? About a week after graduation, a bizarre phone call changed everything. It was around 10 p. Milli. I was in my room, scrolling mindlessly through social media, when my phone vibrated with an unknown number. I answered, figuring it was a telemarketer. But I heard only silence on the other end, followed by a soft, shaky inhale. Then a man's voice, deep, familiar and trembling, murmured, "I'm proud of you." I sat bolt upright, my heart lurching into my throat. "Dad?" I whispered, but the line went dead. I stared at my phone in shock. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped it. That voice had been unmistakably his. The man I remembered reading bedtime stories to me when I was a toddler. The man from the photos. My father. I sprang off my bed, ran to Mom's room, and banged on the door. She opened it, eyes wide. "He just called me," I blurted. "He said he's proud of me." Mom went pale. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally, she sank onto the edge of her bed, burying her face in her hands. "Oh my God," she breathed. "I don't know what this means." Well, we ended up sitting for hours, hashing out every angle. Could Dad be in witness protection? Could he have gotten involved in something illegal? Was he a spy? The speculation got wild, but we had nothing solid. All we knew was that he was alive, watching me from a distance, caring enough to call but still too scared, or too something, to come home. I started feeling like I was living in a low-budget thriller. Each night, I half expected a knock on the door. Each day, I jumped at every unknown caller. But there was nothing else. Just an eerie silence, like he'd said his piece and vanished again. A few more days passed. Tyler was pestering me to hang out. I think he noticed how on edge I was. Finally, I confided in him, giving a vague explanation. My dad might be alive, not sure what's going on. Keep it quiet. He looked shocked and tried to ask a bunch of questions, but I brushed them off. I only needed one real favor from him. Help me search for any trace of my father online. We spent hours scouring social media, but we didn't find a single profile that matched his name or photo. The man was a ghost. It all came to a head one scorching hot afternoon. I was leaving the grocery store when I caught a glimpse of someone in a baseball cap ducking behind a row of cars. My heart lurched. I instinctively called out, "Dad?" The figure froze, then took off at a brisk pace toward the back of the parking lot. I scrambled after him, practically tossing my grocery bag aside. He was fast, but I managed to catch up when he paused by a car, fumbling with the door. Panting, I grabbed his shoulder. He spun around, and there he was, Michael Matthews, older, thinner, with streaks of gray at his temples, but definitely my father. My eyes went blurry with tears. He looked equally stricken, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't find the words. "Logan," he finally said, voice cracking. I stared, chest heaving. "Why?" was all I managed before tears spilled down my cheeks. "How could you let me think you were dead?" He looked around anxiously like he was worried we'd be overheard. He reached out a trembling hand. "Son, I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'll explain everything, but not here." I wanted to throw a punch or maybe just collapse. The swirl of anger, relief, and confusion overwhelmed me. I still don't know how I found the composure, but I nodded. He beckoned me to follow him, so I climbed into the passenger seat of his car, half convinced I was dreaming. We drove in tense silence for a few miles until he pulled into an empty parking lot behind a closed hardware store. Then, hands on the steering wheel, he let out a shaky breath. "It's so good to see you," he said, voice catching. "But I never wanted it to be like this." I stared at his face, noting the new lines, the shadows under his eyes. This wasn't some dream or illusion. My father was alive right in front of me. Mom said the accident... He cut me off gently. "The accident was staged. I was in real danger, Logan. There were people after me, bad people. I had to disappear, or they would have come for you and your mother. I worked with the FBI to fake my death. The fewer people who knew, the safer you both were. I couldn't even risk telling your mom the full details." My head spun. "FBI? Bad people? Are you some kind of criminal?" I croaked, a knot forming in my gut. He shook his head, pain etched across his features. "I was a witness in a big case. I stumbled onto evidence that could put some very powerful people behind bars. When they realized I had access to that information, they threatened me. Your mother and you were leverage. The FBI said the best way to protect everyone was to make me disappear for a while, at least until the case was closed. So you just left, I hissed, tears slipping down my cheeks. You let me and Mom think you were gone forever. He swallowed hard, his own eyes misting. I never wanted to, but it was the only way to keep you safe. If the criminals suspected I was alive, they'd never stop hunting for you. I was too terrified to reach out, even after I sent that letter to your mother. The FBI told me not to. I almost couldn't stand it. Watching from a distance was torture. But I needed you to have a normal life. Immediate. Normal? I let out a harsh laugh. You think growing up without a father was normal? I'm sorry, he whispered, voice trembling. I know it must have hurt. I watched you from afar when I could. I saw you play Little League, heard about your academic awards. I wanted to be there, Logan. I swear. But every time I thought of contacting you, I got word that we weren't secure yet. My chest clenched with years of pent-up longing. So why show up at graduation? A sad smile crossed his face. I couldn't miss it, he said simply. I've missed everything else. Your birthdays, holidays, so many milestones. When I heard you'd be valedictorian, that you'd worked so hard. I had to see it with my own eyes. I stayed in the back, planning to slip out before you noticed me. But you spotted me. I didn't mean to cause you panic. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to slow my racing heart. Tears trickled through my fingers. I don't know if I should hug you or punch you, I muttered. You basically abandoned us. You left Mom to pick up the pieces. He winced. I know. She didn't deserve any of it. Neither did you. The trial ended recently, and the last appeals just went through. It's safer now, though I'm still being cautious. I was working up the courage to actually approach you and your mom face to face. Then you saw me in the parking lot, and here we are. He swallowed. I understand if you hate me. I couldn't speak for a moment. My throat felt raw, tears blurring my vision. Part of me wanted to scream that, yes, I hated him for not being there, for letting me mourn him, for all the heartbreak he caused Mom. Another part of me still loved him, because no matter what, he was my dad, the man from my earliest memories, the one who used to carry me on his shoulders through the park. Finally, I managed. Mom's alive with questions, too. She's been hurting. He nodded, eyes heavy with guilt. I need to see her. I want to explain. But it has to be on her terms. And yours. You both deserve the truth. We talked there for nearly 2 hours. Me peppering him with questions. Him explaining how he'd gotten tangled with a corrupt organization through his old job. Eventually turning informant. The details made my head spin. By the end, I was emotionally exhausted, and Dad looked the same. I told him he owed Mom an apology bigger than anything, and he agreed. We decided we'd meet at our house the next day if Mom was willing. I drove home, mind swirling. Telling Mom that I'd actually sat down and talked to Dad felt like stepping into an alternate reality. She listened in stunned silence, tears streaming down her cheeks. When I told her about the trial, the threats, the witness protection arrangement, she pressed trembling fingers to her lips. He's alive, she whispered. I hoped, but I never let myself believe it could be true. She finally nodded. Okay, let's see him. Let's hear him out. The following afternoon, I paced the living room, palms sweaty, waiting for Dad to show up. Mom sat on the couch, fidgeting with a throw pillow. Neither of us spoke much. Around 3, a tentative knock sounded at the door. My stomach lurched. I opened it to find him standing there, holding a small bouquet of flowers like some awkward prom date. His eyes flicked between Mom and me. Hi, Jen, he said softly. She was already crying, her hands shaking as she clutched the pillow. He stepped in, gently set the flowers on the coffee table, and then there was this long, painful silence. I cleared my throat, trying not to break down myself. Dad, I said, maybe just talk. He nodded, swallowing. Then he told Mom everything he'd told me, more or less. The threats, the FBI, the staging of the accident. She sobbed into her hands, anger and relief crashing over her. She demanded to know why he hadn't warned her, told her the truth, let her decide if she wanted to take the risk. He explained that once the wheels were in motion, the FBI insisted on zero contact to make the ruse believable. He'd disobeyed them once with the letter, and they nearly cut him off. He didn't want to risk them pulling their protection and leaving us open to danger. Mom raged, listing all the nights she spent crying, all the ways she had to help me grieve a father she also believed was truly gone at first. Until that note arrived. Dad cried too, apologizing over and over, saying he never wanted any of this. I stood there watching the two people who meant the most to me break down, realizing that there was no instant fix for 13 years of pain. I stepped into the conversation occasionally, reminding Mom that Dad truly believed he was protecting us. It was messy and raw, and we ended up talking and sometimes shouting for hours until the sun went down. Eventually, though, the anger drained, replaced by this cautious relief. He was alive. We had a chance at least to be in each other's lives again. It wouldn't be a fairy tale reunion. There were too many scars, too much time lost, but at least the secrets were in the open. At one point, Mom murmured, "So it's really over then? The danger's past?" Dad nodded, explaining the final convictions. "Yeah, it should be. There's always a small risk, but the major players are locked away for life. No one's come after me yet, and the feds say we're basically in the clear." We all exhaled, almost in unison. That night, Dad didn't stay over. Mom was nowhere near ready for that, but she agreed to keep talking. "Step by step," she said quietly. Dad gave me a tearful hug before he left, promising he wasn't going to vanish again. He handed me a new phone number, telling me to call anytime. The days that followed were emotionally draining. Sometimes I'd call him just to talk about mundane stuff, trying to piece together the person he'd become. Other times I'd get hit with a wave of resentment, remembering birthdays he missed, father-son events where I stood alone. I'd lash out, pushing him away. He took it all, apologizing, saying he understood my anger. Mom was similarly torn. She'd alternate between affectionate nostalgia and biting fury. We arranged a few dinners together, always feeling out the new dynamic. It was weird seeing them both in the same room. Part of me was thrilled to have a chance at a complete family again. Another part of me wondered if we could ever repair the trust that was broken. Word got out slowly. My grandparents were stunned, to say the least. They'd attended his funeral, stood by the casket, believed all of it. Dad had to explain to them too, which was another round of tears and anger and confusion. Eventually, we set ground rules for how we were going to move forward. We all agreed that Dad needed to focus on rebuilding relationships, that we'd respect each other's feelings even if they were messy. It was awkward as hell, but it also felt like progress. Meanwhile, my college orientation date was fast approaching. I debated whether to invite Dad to come along. Part of me longed for that fatherly presence, someone to help me lug boxes and arrange my dorm furniture. But the other part was still raw, not sure if I was ready to publicly act like everything was normal. In the end, I told him I'd let him know how I felt closer to the move-in date. He nodded, saying he'd respect any choice I made. There's no neat ending to this story. I don't have a perfect reunion or a happily ever after moment. What I do have is a dad who, against all odds, is alive and trying to be part of my life again. My mom and I are still working through the betrayal we both felt. Some days it seems like we might all find a path forward. Other days, it feels like there's a mountain of regret and anger standing in the way. But no matter what, I'll never forget the shock of seeing him at my graduation, the moment that flipped my entire world upside down. If you made it this far, thanks for reading. I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but I swear it's real. I'm not asking for advice so much as I just needed to tell someone, anyone, beyond the tiny circle of people who know. Part of me still wakes up expecting it all to be a dream, expecting to find out there was some crazy misunderstanding. But every time I see my father's face, watch him rub the back of his neck when he's anxious, a habit I inherited, it turns out, I'm reminded that truth can be stranger than any fiction, and that sometimes the dead can come back, only for us to discover they never really left in the first place.